everyone wants to know where we are with school guidance. So this afternoon we are releasing the school guidance documents for opening schools up across our state. And we know a lot of folks, parents, teachers, are pretty keen on where we're going with some of this. So some of the things I do want to highlight before we get into it too much. First, a big thank you to the Department of Education. Commissioner Ada Blue did a fantastic job in working with the school transitioning, I got to get the name right, it's called START, I always call it START, School Transitioning Reopen and Redesign Task Force, STRRT. This was the group we put together, about 30 or so stakeholders from all different walks of life with connection to the school community, parents, teachers, administrators, input from students. This is the group that put out the tens of thousands of surveys across the state so we could get the feedback from all the different communities. So we knew we weren't going to be making decisions just within a bubble. We weren't going to be just doing anything behind closed doors, making sure everything we did was transparent, having some public meetings about what was important, what should be included, not just in the guidance document, but where we really need to go as a state. And I just can't thank all of them. They did a phenomenal, phenomenal job. And all the guidance that we've put out today comes from the recommendation of that START task force. And again, they did a great job. The one thing that really underlies all of this guidance document is flexibility. That's what the START team heard across the board. I think that's what everyone understood was needed in a state like New Hampshire. Local flexibility with comprehensive public safety guidelines. So in other words, we just want to make sure that we have the ability to understand that what happens, the example I like to use is little elementary school over in Croydon. They have about 30 or so students. Very different than Manchester Central High School with 1,500 students, right? Different dynamics, different management capabilities, different resources that might be at hand for the town and for the school. And so by providing the guidelines but allowing the teachers and administrators to manage, what we've really tried to do is make sure we didn't create something so rigid it was doomed to fail, so rigid it would be brittle. If you create mandates that are so tough to meet, ultimately, I do believe, and I think the folks on the task force heard it loud and clear and agreed, that you're really setting yourselves up for failure. We have to provide some flexibility. We have to provide a listening moment, if you will, from the administrators and most importantly the teachers and the parents about what will work and not work in the classroom. Let teachers do what they do best, and that's manage the classroom, provide a great education, work with their students, all working within these guidelines and giving them the flexibility to keep kids safe and provide that education within our school system. A big piece of this is communication, right? There's a reason I come out and do my at least a couple times a week we do these press conferences, because communication is so important, transparency is so important in times of crisis, in times of anxiety. We want to make sure everyone is on board with what's happening. So one of the key aspects of these plans is making sure there is a lead communication team within each district. Each district is communicating to the teachers and the parents what things will look like, what the opportunities are, where some of the pitfalls are, what's happening and what isn't, not just at the beginning of the school year, but all the way through. So we want to, with this, the first and foremost, I think this guidance document creates a shell and an outline for districts to build that communications team. And when you have that transparency and you have that back and forth communications between parents, teachers, and students, and folks that are managing those facilities, again, I really do believe it's a pillar of success, not just for getting kids back in September, but maintaining school operations for the long term. So let's just hit some of those key highlights. Professional development. So first and foremost, teachers and administrators need to understand what this new norm in our schools is going to look like. So a couple things. We've really tried to highlight the opportunities for professional development, staffing preparation. What will schools do if a couple teachers are out with COVID potentially, or have to be quarantined? Do they have enough staff to provide the backups? We'll talk about hybrid models a little bit in a minute and where classrooms and schools can go, but making sure that teachers have the time to prepare what their classrooms might look like, making sure they have extra development days on the front end, and the Department of Education is allowing, they've asked for 3 more professional development days on the front end of the school year. We're absolutely going to provide that flexibility so they can, again, work with their administrations, figure out what their classrooms might look like, and make sure that, again, they're providing the opportunities for these kids. We have a lot of classroom guidance in terms of what actually happens in the classroom. How to space out the desks, how to ensure that you're maintaining as much social distancing as possible. We would like to see at least 3 to 6 feet between between the desks if we can. We understand that that will be very workable and very easy in some classrooms and a little more of a challenge in others. Doesn't mean we're going to shut down those classrooms, but we're going to allow the teachers to provide some flexibility and find the best path for their students. Masks are not going to be mandated in every aspect of the school, but knowing that to manage that, to enforce that, if you will, could again create that rigidity that could cause the system to fail. So we're going to make sure we're encouraging it, we're pushing folks to wear masks at all times if they can, but also understand that especially in the elementary school grades or during certain activities and certain times of the day, people may have to take their mask off. Hopefully when they can maintain more social distancing. Look, we looked at areas of congregation. How do you manage, students that might congregate at the lockers or in the hallways or things of that nature? And we always want to encourage those students to have a mask, to wear a mask in those settings, to really have the teachers engage with the administrators and the students, in a way changing the culture of the school around this COVID epidemic. And hopefully it's a temporary change, of course. We hope we're not dealing with COVID next year. But there is a bit of a cultural change that has to happen around public health and safety, specifically with COVID. And I think the Department of Public Health did a great job providing some of the guidance to give some options for teachers and parents and students to really find that new medium. And then some of the basic things we talk about all the time: hand hygiene, when to make sure you're washing your hands, when to again make sure you're having the practical social distancing. The word I keep going back to, and I think is really important, is practical. This entire document has to be practical. It has to be manageable for the individuals that are going to be on the front lines having to perform it. Transportation is a big issue. So we have up here our transportation protocol. So I'm going to give a couple quick examples. Busing obviously is a big issue. There have been some guidance documents, and the START task force looked at guidance documents from all over the country. The one thing I will also add in as excuse the tangent, the document that we're putting out, which is available to the public, is very much a dynamic document. It has so many links in there to pieces of information or other guidance, what other states are doing, other ideas that might be possible. It really was created really, really well to provide as much information as possible. But I got to tell you, I've seen other documents around the country that said, well, every kid that is on a school bus has to be, you can only fill every other seat, and every kid absolutely must be masked, no exceptions. What I think the task force realized was that might not be very practical. Is the bus driver going to have to stop every 100 yards to make sure every kid is putting their mask on and not playing with it? If you create a system where only one child is in every other seat, you're going to need 3 or 4 times the number of buses and bus stops, right? So things of that nature are good ideas from a public health standpoint, to be sure, but we wanted to make sure that we didn't create a system that just couldn't be achieved. And so allowing a little bit of flexibility there, encouraging the masking and the social distancing, maybe encouraging assigned seating, things like that. That's a much more manageable process. There's other tools and ideas in this document that those districts can implement to allow that distancing, to allow the public health and safety aspects to come to the forefront with transportation, but still be manageable for the bus drivers and get the kids to school in a practical time frame.